entering 2021, Maryland is what I would consider a under-the-radar team. Mike Locksley has revamped his staff to include well-respected coordinator Dan Enos, Taulia Tagovailoa, along with 7 other offensive starters return, along with 6 defensive starters that return, totaling 14 returning starters, along with possibly one of the best quarterbacks by potential in the Big Ten. With great coordinators, Mike Locksley enters 2021 at a crossroad. Is he building something there, or is it all going to fall apart, and is Maryland going to be the same joke it has been since 2010? And I think that for now, Maryland is on the right track. And that is because significant improvement was not only seen from 2019 to 2020, but the staff changes and the recruiting class that has been brought in shows signs of promise. So in Mike Locksley's first year, the Maryland Terrapins went 3-9, 113th out of the 130 teams that played that year by record winning percentage. They only won one conference game against Rutgers, who didn't win any conference games, so they only beat the worst team in their conference. They scored about 25 points a game, but allowed 35, and had the 88th out of 130 teams. They had the 88 out of 130 record strength, which is pretty awful. They had multiple quarterbacks try out: Josh Jackson, Terrell Pigram, Tyler Doucet even got a couple of snaps too. None had a good rating, and all the best quarterback, Josh Jackson, had a 2-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, which is nothing to be proud of. Anthony McFarland and Javon Leake led the team in rushing. So 2019 Maryland, if we're being honest, was a dumpster fire. And in 2020, Maryland started out the same way. They got humiliated in a 43-3 loss to Northwestern, who was unranked at the time. And honestly, not many quote-unquote experts expected them to do well, though many local individuals and smaller writers had Northwestern going somewhere with their large returning talent and Pat Fitzgerald's reputation. So Maryland ended up losing to the best team in the Big Ten West that year. And then they barely beat Minnesota after Minnesota missed their PAT in overtime, beat them 45-44 for a 1-1 record. They come into Beaver Stadium, obviously an underdog, as no one would have expected last year's Penn State team to go 8-0-3 starting out. Maryland comes in and dominates Penn State in Beaver Stadium, and it leaves everyone scratching their head. A, because Maryland has a winning record in conference, and they beat two teams that were expected to be solid, though later turned out to be gutter trash, and B, Taulia Tagovailoa looked amazing and connected with Rakeem Jarrett 2 times for touchdowns. Now, 2020 Maryland then finished out 0-2. Their offense regressed, scoring only about 24 points a game. Their defense improved, though, only 32 points per game allowed, which is still a lot. Their strength of record drastically improved, and so did their strength of schedule, since they're playing all Big Ten and didn't have too many games. If you added some filler non-conference games and the regular season was what it was, they probably would have went 6-6, worst 5-7. Best they could have went with Taulia's inconsistency was probably a 7-5 regular season. So that was the 2020 Maryland team. Again, freshman Rakeem Jarrett was the second leading receiver. 2 touchdowns of the year. I think both of those were in the Penn State game. Jake Funk led in rushing with an average of 8.6 yards per carry. That is insane. He led the Big Ten in that category. And Taulia Tagovailoa was the main quarterback. 7 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. But the quarterback ratings went up significantly. Much better QB play, much better play overall. Taulia has given Maryland just this better arc of play. And with the all Big Ten schedule, the fact Maryland's defense improved and their offense didn't regress so much, a lot of 2019's Maryland stats were buffed by good performances against bad teams like Syracuse and the FCS team that they faced opening up, in which I think both of those games, Maryland scored a combined 120-plus points and only allowed around 20 points. So 2020 Maryland was certainly an improvement. And next year, I think there will be improvement because going back to those 14 starters, 8 on offense, 6 on defense, Maryland also was second in the Big Ten in yards per play, 6.6 yards per play, but they finished 11th in scoring. And that is mainly because of Taulia Tagovailoa's turnovers. I mean, a 1-to-1 touchdown interception ratio will not get you anywhere in college football in the modern era. It's impossible. You cannot have success with a 1-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. The running back, Jake Funk, is off to the NFL, drafted by the Rams, and there needs to be 2 replaced starters up front. But I'd say Maryland's offense heading into next year, especially with coordinator Dan Enos, will be in the better half of Big Ten offenses. And that includes in conference play as well. Maryland's offense will certainly be a force to be reckoned with. Their defense, I don't know so much about, especially with 2 less returning starters and allowing 32 points a game last year. Their defense, I think, will take a step forward, and their recruiting class, Maryland's 2021 recruiting class, saw them bring in a 5-star linebacker, a 4-star outside linebacker, and then you had a 4-star defensive end and 2 4-star defensive tackles. So the young raw talent is there. And in 2020, they also brought in a 4-star outside linebacker. Their star signee, though, was Rakeem Jarrett in the 2020 recruiting class. But the 2021 recruiting class was a top 20 class, and bringing in what looks to be mainly defensive talent for the higher end is something that Maryland really needs, especially with their offense having better returning production and being the better part of what Maryland is. And I think Dan Enos will develop Taulia Tagovailoa into being the second or probably a top 3 Big Ten quarterback. Again, Taulia Tagovailoa has a very high ceiling, but so far has a very low floor. But Dan Enos coached his brother Tua at Alabama and was widely credited for developing Tua's high completion percentage and passer rating for the 2018 season. And looking at where Tua has turned out at, that's something to be proud of. Dan Enos then coached as Miami, Florida's offensive coordinator in 2019, then was Cincinnati's running backs coach, and then was hired away by Maryland just this year to be their offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. So the offense is in good hands, the defense has the talent, and with total 14 returning starters, I think Maryland is in a great position to do well next year. And Maryland next year, they don't really have that strong of a starting schedule except with their opener against West Virginia, which is their opener. Maryland, however, they do play Iowa and Minnesota, who will be some of the better teams in the West next year. I have Maryland going about 6-6. 3-6 in conference. I think they'll beat Illinois. I think Brett Bielema's first year will be a tough year, but I think the difference between him and Lovie Smith will be that Bielema will have far closer games than his predecessor, Lovie Smith. But back to Maryland. I think Maryland will beat West Virginia. They'll beat Howard, Illinois, Kent State. They'll start off pretty strong at 4-0, but I don't see them winning a game against Iowa, Ohio State, Minnesota, or Indiana. I have them upsetting Penn State at home. I think after that 4-4 start, especially after the 4-0 start, then the 0-4 collapse that I have projecting, they'll be motivated enough to beat Maryland. I think they'll lose to Michigan State. Michigan State just has to get a win. I can't see them going 3-9. I have them only beating Purdue and Maryland. But the Penn State and Michigan State games for Maryland are toss-ups. I think they'll then lose to Michigan, and I think with their talent, they'll probably beat Rutgers, though I think Greg Schiano is the better coach compared to Mike Locksley. But I think Maryland goes bowling next year. I would not call them anything close to a Big Ten contender yet, but I do believe certainly that they're heading in the right direction. Again, don't think they'll be a Big Ten contender. I don't think they'll ever be, even if they do get consistent top 15, top 20 recruiting classes. I don't think their coaching nor their tradition will kind of allow them to get there, but they are certainly heading in the right direction, and I think that they have a very good chance at going bowling next year. And ESPN's FPI ESPN's FPI would certainly agree with me. 5.9 to 6.1 projected wins losses, that pretty much rounds up to 6-6, and Maryland has a 60% chance at getting 6 wins, which compared to last year I'd say is pretty good. So in conclusion, Maryland's heading in the right direction. I think Taulia Tagovailoa will explode next year, probably get first, second, third Big Ten team quarterback. I would not be shocked at that. Dan Enos, very good at developing quarterbacks. Offensive will be explosive. Defense is the questionable part, but certainly they have potential for improvement, especially with the talent they are racking in. That's all I have to talk about. Comment below your thoughts on this video, and if you've reached this far, remember to like and subscribe for more content. I have an in-depth video about my main sleeper teams. Maryland really isn't a sleeper team for me since they're not going to be contending for a New Year's Six Bowl. But I have a video about my main New Year's Six college football playoff, maybe, but more New Year's Six sleepers coming out soon, and I'll do a video about Big Ten in-depth projections that is coming out soon as well, probably in the next week or two. Remember, again, like, subscribe, comment, turn on the notification bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.